My influencer girlfriend used me as an ATM for 3 years and spent $200K of my money. But when I discovered she was cheating with her ex on our anniversary trip, I left her stranded, broke, and destroyed the career I funded. I'm 30 years old, work as a financial analyst in Manhattan, and I'm going to tell you the story of how I wasted 3 years and probably about $200,000 on the wrong person, and how I got revenge when I discovered the truth. I'm not the type of person who seeks revenge normally. I mean, I'm a pretty calm guy. But what Natalie did to me was so calculated, so blatant, that I simply couldn't let it slide. And honestly, I don't regret even a little bit what I did. I met Natalie like 3.5 years ago at a networking event that, ironically, I didn't even want to go to. My friend David dragged me there because there was an open bar and, when you're a financial analyst working 80 hours a week, open bar is enough motivation. She was there with a group of friends, all dressed like they were going to the Oscars or something. And when I saw her, I thought, this woman is completely out of my league. Natalie was 25 at the time, was incredibly beautiful, like runway, model type, and she was trying to build a career as a fashion influencer. I approached because I'd had enough whiskey to feel brave, and surprisingly, we connected. We talked for hours about her dreams of being the next big thing on Instagram, about how she wanted to build a personal brand and work with designers. She sounded ambitious, passionate, and I, like an idiot, thought it was refreshing to meet someone with such clear goals. The first few months were amazing. I'm not gonna lie. Natalie was fun, charismatic, and made my office life seem less monotonous. We started officially dating after like 2 months, and that's when this whole financial disaster began, though I didn't see it that way at the time. She casually mentioned she needed a dress for a fashion event, something she could photograph for her Instagram because she was trying to get collaborations with brands, and I, wanting to be the supportive boyfriend, gave her money to buy it. It was like $800, which seemed like a lot at the time, but she said it was an investment in her career and that when she started making money from sponsorships, she'd pay me back. That was the first of about 1,000 broken promises. Things escalated ridiculously fast. After the dress came the professional photographer, because, according to Natalie, cell phone photos weren't professional enough to attract brands. That was $2,000. Then she needed a better phone to take better quality photos, because apparently her 2-year-old iPhone was ancient in the influencer world. Another $1,200. Then came the lighting equipment for making videos at home, subscriptions to premium editing tools, an online course about social media growth that cost $5,000 and that, honestly, I don't know if she ever finished. And I paid for all of this because, well, I made good money and she constantly reminded me that she was building something that would eventually benefit both of us. Looking back, I have seen it coming. All the signs were there, but I guess I was too in love to see reality. The first year was basically me financing every aspect of her influencer life while she posted photos at expensive cafes, trendy restaurants, and events I took her to, always with captions about working hard and chasing your dreams. The ironic thing is that her hard work was literally just posing for photos while I paid the bills. She lived in a tiny apartment in Queens that she shared with 2 roommates, but spent almost all her time at my apartment on the Upper East Side because, obviously, my place was better for photos. Her followers grew from like 8,000 to 45,000 that first year, and she was thrilled, saying we were getting closer and closer to success. I worked like 12 hours a day, analyzing financial markets, while she woke up at noon to photograph her brunch. By the second year, the situation intensified even more. Natalie started getting some small collaborations with brands, like she'd receive free products in exchange for posts, but they never paid with actual money. She presented this as a huge achievement. Like, I'm getting there. Brands are noticing me. But the reality is, she was still not generating a single cent of real income. Meanwhile, I paid her rent because she said she needed to focus completely on her career without the distraction of a part-time job. Paid for her gym because being in shape was part of her brand. Paid for her monthly facial treatments because her skin had to look perfect in photos, and basically covered every expense of her life. Her parents lived in Connecticut and had money, but apparently believed in tough love and refused to finance what they called her influencer fantasies. So all the responsibility fell on me. What really kills me now, thinking about it, is that Natalie never seemed grateful, just entitled. You know what I mean? Like, I had the obligation to pay for everything because I was her boyfriend and made good money. Every time I mentioned that maybe she could look for a part-time job while building her brand, she got defensive and said, I didn't understand how the influencer world worked, that she needed to be available 24/7 for events and opportunities, that a traditional job would ruin her flexibility. And I, like a complete idiot, accepted her arguments and kept paying. The third year was when things got really expensive. Natalie said she needed to level up, that to compete with other influencers, she needed to show a more aspirational lifestyle. That meant trips to the Hamptons that she photographed as if it were her normal life, dinners at Michelin restaurants that I paid for while she took 500 photos before the food got cold, designer clothes that, according to her, were essential for her image. I bought her a Louis Vuitton bag for her 27th birthday because she said all serious influencers had at least one, and that damn bag cost $3,500. I also paid for a trip to Miami for an influencer event where she basically spent the weekend taking photos at the beach and in clubs. That was like $6,000 between flights, hotel, and all her outings. By the time our third anniversary came around in September, I had easily spent $200,000 on her during our relationship, probably more if I count all the meals, the Ubers, the small gifts that add up. Natalie was 28, I was 30, and I started thinking seriously about our future. I had planned a romantic trip to Montauk to celebrate, a quiet place on the coast where we could relax and talk about where we were going as a couple. I booked a boutique hotel with ocean views, made reservations at amazing restaurants, everything was organized. But 2 weeks before the trip, Natalie said no, that Montauk was too basic, that all influencers went there and she wanted something different, something more unique for her photos. She suggested this other coastal town like 3 hours away, a place I hadn't even heard of, and she insisted so much that I finally canceled all the Montauk stuff and booked this other place she wanted. I should have known something was wrong when she was so insistent about changing plans, but I didn't think much about it at the time. We arrived at the hotel on a Friday afternoon. It was a nice place, boutique, oceanfront like she wanted. That night we went to dinner at a restaurant overlooking the ocean, and Natalie brought up the subject of marriage. It wasn't a romantic conversation or anything. It was more like transactional, asking me when I thought we'd get married, saying we'd already been together 3 years and she wanted to start planning the future. I told her I definitely saw a future with her, but that I wanted to be smart about finances, especially considering how much I'd invested in her career. I mentioned, very casually, that if we got married we'd probably do a prenuptial agreement just to protect my assets given my work in finance. The look on her face, honestly, I should have photographed it. She went cold instantly. Said prenups were for people who didn't trust their partner, that if I really loved her I wouldn't need one. The tension was uncomfortable for the rest of dinner. Saturday morning, Natalie said she wanted to go shopping in town, that she'd seen some cute boutiques online and wanted to explore, take photos, typical stuff for her. I gave her my credit card like always, like I didn't even think about it anymore. It was routine at that point. She left around 10 inches the morning, and I stayed at the hotel working a bit, checking emails because markets don't sleep even when you're on vacation. 2 hours passed. 3, 4 hours, and I hadn't heard from her. I sent her messages asking how everything was going, if she needed me to pick her up somewhere, but she only responded with vague messages like still looking at stores or found a nice place for photos. The weird thing is, I checked my bank app because I wanted to see how much she was spending, just out of curiosity, and there wasn't a single new charge on the card. Not one. In 4 hours of supposedly shopping, she hadn't bought absolutely anything, which was completely out of the ordinary for Natalie. Something didn't add up, My financial analyst brain started seeing patterns that didn't make sense. I decided to go for a walk around town, maybe find her casually, and basically went through all the boutique stores there were. Nothing. She wasn't in any of them. I started to get a little worried. Not for her safety necessarily, but because something just felt off. I walked to the port area. There was a small marina with some restaurants and cafes, and that's when I saw her. Natalie was sitting on the terrace of a cafe with ocean views, but she wasn't alone. She was with a guy, and it wasn't just any guy. By the way they were laughing, how she touched his arm. It was obvious they weren't just friends. I stood there like an idiot behind some trees, watching, trying to process what I was seeing. I took out my phone and took photos. I don't know why. I guess my brain automatically thought about documenting evidence. The guy was tall, tanned, dressed casual but in expensive clothes, like that rich beach guy look who doesn't need to try. I watched them for like 20 minutes. He paid the bill, and then they walked together toward the stores. I followed them, which I know sounds kind of stalkerish, but I needed to know what was happening. They went into a luxury boutique, one of those where bags cost more than most people's monthly rent, and I watched him buy her something. I couldn't see exactly what, but I saw when the employee wrapped something in an elegant box and the guy paid with his card. Natalie hugged him, gave him a kiss on the cheek, and he walked off toward the parking lot while she stayed in the store a while longer. I went back to the hotel feeling like I'd been kicked in the stomach. My mind was racing, trying to understand what I'd just witnessed, looking for innocent explanations that simply didn't exist. Natalie arrived around 3 inches the afternoon, all smiles, carrying a bag from that luxury boutique. She showed me what she'd supposedly bought, a beautiful Gucci bag, and said she'd paid cash for it because she'd saved money from some recent collaborations. That was the most blatant lie she'd told me, because I knew, absolutely knew, that she didn't have that kind of money saved. And I'd just seen with my own eyes that guy buying it for her. I didn't say anything at that moment. I stayed quiet, acting normal, smiling when she modeled the bag for photos in the hotel mirror. Inside, I was furious, betrayed, but also incredibly calm. You know what I mean? It was like something in me had shut off emotionally, and only my analytical brain was left working, calculating my next move. That night we went to dinner, and she acted like nothing happened, taking photos of the food, the sunset, the wine, posting stories on Instagram about our perfect anniversary. I smiled for the photos while planning exactly how I was going to handle this situation. I waited until she fell asleep that night, like 2 inches the morning, and I stayed awake searching online. Turns out it wasn't hard to figure out who the guy was. I searched through old photos of Natalie on Instagram, the ones from before we started dating, and I found him. Tyler, her ex-boyfriend, the one who supposedly left her 4 years ago and who she supposedly had no contact with. Apparently he lived in that coastal town, was a luxury real estate broker, which explained his money and his look. The pieces started falling into place. Natalie had specifically insisted on changing our trip to that town. Not because she wanted something unique, but because she knew Tyler lived there. She'd planned everything to see him. They'd probably been talking behind my back for months or maybe years, and I'd been the idiot financing her life all this time while she was cheating on me. Sunday morning I woke up early, like 6 a.m., and made a decision. I wasn't going to make a scene. I wasn't going to confront her directly. I was going to be strategic. Silently, I packed all my stuff, got cash from an ATM for the trip back, and booked the first train back to Manhattan. Before leaving, I wrote a note. I left it on the nightstand next to her, and it said something like, "I know about Tyler. I know you've been cheating on me, probably for a long time. I canceled your return flight to the city. I figure out how to get back yourself. I guess Tyler can help you with that, considering he bought you that bag. Don't try to contact me. We're done. And if you ever come near my apartment, I'll call security." I signed with my name and left the hotel without making a sound. The trip back was 3 hours where my mind oscillated between absolute fury and a kind of cold satisfaction. When I got to my apartment, the first thing I did was block Natalie from my phone, from all my social media, from everything. Then I called the airline and actually canceled her return flight that was scheduled for that afternoon, losing like $400 in penalty fees. But honestly, I didn't give a damn. Then I sent messages to my close friends, to people who knew both her and me, and sent them the photos I'd taken of Natalie with Tyler at the cafe, along with a simple message explaining we'd broken up because I'd caught her cheating on me. I wasn't dramatic or anything. I just wanted the truth to get out before she could control the narrative. Natalie started calling me around 11 inches the morning. I guess she'd just read my note. Obviously, I couldn't receive them because I'd blocked her. But some mutual friends told me she was frantically writing them, asking how to contact me, that she needed to explain, that it was all a misunderstanding. One of my friends told her, "I don't think there's much to misunderstand. He has photos of you with your ex buying you, things while your boyfriend paid for the trip, and she stopped writing to him. A couple hours passed, and she started posting on Instagram vague stories about how people disappoint you and how sometimes things aren't what they seem, clearly trying to play the victim card. But several of my friends commented or sent her messages saying they already knew the truth, so her stories became more desperate, more defensive. What happened next was, honestly, more satisfying than I expected. Without my financial support, Natalie's whole facade crumbled incredibly fast. She'd been living completely beyond her actual means, everything sustained by my money, and when that disappeared, she had nothing. Her queen's rent, which I'd been paying for the last 6 months, because she said she couldn't afford to renew her lease and find new roommates. Well, she no longer had anyone to pay it. Her gym, her facial treatments, her constant outings to expensive places for photos, all of that evaporated, and her influencer career, which was supposedly about to take off after 3 years of my investment, turns out it was completely unsustainable without someone financing it. The first week after I got back from that trip was surreal. Natalie tried everything to contact me, sending me messages from friends' numbers, creating new Instagram accounts so she could write to me. She even tried sending me emails at work, which was completely inappropriate. In all her messages, she swore Tyler meant nothing, that he was just an old friend, that I'd misinterpreted everything, that she'd bought the bag herself, lie after lie. The interesting thing is, she could never explain why she'd insisted so much on changing our trip specifically to that town, or why she'd lied about shopping for 4 hours without spending a cent, or why she hadn't mentioned she'd be seeing her ex. The inconsistencies in her story were obvious to anyone with half a brain. Like she appeared on a Tuesday night crying, begging me to talk, to let her explain. The doorman called me on the intercom and I simply told him not to let her up, that if she didn't leave, we'd call the police. I could hear her screaming in the background about how I could be so cruel, how after 3 years I couldn't at least listen to her. But honestly, there was nothing I wanted to hear. I already knew the truth. I had photographic proof of her cheating, and honestly, after seeing how willing she'd been to lie so blatantly to my face about that bag, after realizing all the money I'd spent on her only for her to betray me, I felt absolutely nothing but contempt. What surprised me was how quickly her whole Instagram world collapsed. Her posts, which used to be daily or every 2 days, became sporadic. She was no longer posting photos at expensive restaurants or in new designer clothes because, obviously, she no longer had access to those things. She tried to maintain the facade while reposting old photos with captions about throwback or vintage vibes, but it was pathetic and obvious. Her engagement plummeted because fashion influencers need constant and fresh content, and she no longer had the resources to create it. Within 2 months, her stories went from showing a glamorous lifestyle to being veiled complaints about fake people and generic motivational posts about overcoming difficult times. Some of our mutual acquaintances told me she was trying to get a job in retail, in clothing stores, but that her resume was basically 3 years of nothing but trying to be an influencer, which didn't impress anyone. Tyler, by the way, completely ghosted her once Natalie's situation became clear. I guess it was fun being the guy who bought expensive things for a pretty influencer when she had a rich boyfriend, but much less fun being her only financial option when she had nothing. One of my friends who knew people in that coastal town told me Tyler had basically been playing with several women at the same time, that Natalie wasn't special to him, just another one. That information gave me particular satisfaction because it meant she'd risked a 3-year relationship with someone who genuinely supported her for a guy who didn't care about her beyond being a casual conquest. About 3 months after all this, in December, I decided to do something for myself. I booked that Montauk trip I'd originally planned for our anniversary, but this time I went alone. I stayed at the same boutique hotel, ate at good restaurants, walked on the beach, and honestly, it was more relaxing than any trip I took with Natalie. There was no one taking 500 photos before eating, no one complaining that the hotel wasn't aesthetic enough for Instagram, just me genuinely enjoying the place. I also started therapy because, even though I was angry, more than sad, I knew I needed to process the 3 years I'd wasted and understand why I'd allowed someone to use me like that. My therapist helped me see that I'd confused providing financially with love. That I'd been so focused on being the supportive boyfriend that I didn't see all the obvious red flags. Natalie, for her part, tried to reinvent herself several times on Instagram. First, she tried to play the victim card, posting vague posts about toxicity and narcissism, clearly trying to paint me as the villain without mentioning me directly. But since many of our mutual acquaintances knew the truth, that didn't work for her. Then she tried the independent woman who doesn't need a man angle, posting selfies with captions about finding herself and growing, but it was hard to sell that narrative when she was clearly in a desperate financial situation. Her followers, which had reached like 52,000 at their peak, started slowly dropping. People follow fashion influencers for the aspirational lifestyle, and Natalie could no longer offer that. Eventually, I heard she had to move back with her parents. In Connecticut, the same parents who'd refused to finance her influencer career from the beginning. I don't know exactly what they told her, but I can imagine it was some variation of, "We told you so." The last I heard, like a month ago, is she's trying to reinvent herself as a life coach or something, posting videos on TikTok about manifestation and mindfulness, which honestly is hilarious considering her idea of working hard was letting me pay for everything while she took photos. She has like 200 followers on that new account, having lost access or credibility on her original account that she worked so hard. Do I feel bad about leaving her stranded in that coastal town? No, not at all. Do I feel bad about canceling her flight? Not one bit. Do I feel bad about blocking all contact and sharing the truth with our friends? Zero regrets. Natalie made calculated decisions for 3 years to use my money while maintaining something with her ex, and when I caught her, she blatantly lied to my face. I don't owe her compassion or a second chance. People have asked me if I was too harsh, if I should have listened to her, but honestly, what else was there to hear? I had photographic proof. I had her obvious lies about the bag. I had 3 years of behavior patterns that finally made sense. What bothers me most, thinking about it, isn't so much the money, though $200,000 is an obscene amount. It's the time. It's 3 years of my life I wasted with someone who saw me as an ATM, not as a partner. 3 years where I could have been with someone who genuinely loved me, who contributed equitably to the relationship, who respected me. Natalie never respected me. That's clear now. She saw me as a means to finance the lifestyle she wanted. And when I mentioned a prenup, when I suggested protecting my assets, her reaction revealed exactly what her true intentions were. It wasn't love. It was convenience and opportunism. Now I'm 30. Living in my apartment that now feels genuinely mine without an influencer, occupying every corner with ring lights and clothes everywhere. And I'm focusing on myself. Therapy is helping. I've been going out with friends more often. I've gone back to the gym regularly. Things I'd neglected because I was always busy working to maintain Natalie's lifestyle. I've had some dates here and there, nothing serious yet, and I'm probably not going to look for anything serious for a while. I need to recalibrate my radar for detecting people who use me. I need to learn to set firmer boundaries about money and relationships. I need to understand why I allowed this to continue for so long when the signs were there. Does Natalie still try to contact me? Not that I know of. She's still blocked on everything. Mutual friends no longer update me about her because I asked them not to. And honestly, I'm not interested in knowing. Her life after me is not my problem or my responsibility. Tyler isn't my problem either. Though part of me hopes someday she realizes the guy is a player who's never going to take her seriously, but that's her karma, not my concern. What I did by leaving her stranded, by cutting off all funding suddenly, by sharing the truth about her cheating, wasn't cruelty. It was justice proportional to the betrayal. She played, she lost, and now she has to live with the consequences of her actions. The saddest part of all this is that Natalie probably could have had a successful career as an influencer if she'd been genuine, if she'd really worked hard, if she'd complemented her passion with a stable job while building her brand organically. But she chose the easy path. Find a boyfriend with money willing to finance everything, and when that wasn't enough, seek attention and gifts from her ex while maintaining the facade with me. It's hard to feel sorry for someone who orchestrated their own downfall that way. Sometimes I wonder if she was with Tyler the whole time, if the entire 3 years were a lie, or if it was something that started later. Honestly, it doesn't matter. The result is the same. She used me and lied to me, and that's enough. I don't need to know every detail of her betrayal to know I did the right thing, ending everything so drastically. People who know me, who know what I'm normally like, understand that what I did required reaching a point of absolute betrayal. I'm not vindictive by nature, but I'm not a doormat either, and Natalie needed to learn that actions have consequences. So yeah, that's my story. 3 years, $200,000, and a betrayal I discovered by pure accident on an anniversary trip she herself insisted on changing. The revenge was leaving her stranded, cutting off all support and making sure the truth was known before she could manipulate the narrative. Do I regret it? Not for a second. Would I do it again? Absolutely. And if Natalie ever reads this, which I doubt because she probably can't, afford premium internet anymore to keep searching for me online, I hope she learned that eventually people discover your lies,